Hello audio nerds and welcome to the channel. Now I always feel somewhat conflicted when reviewing Bluetooth true wireless iems. This channel is after all targeted at those who value sound quality above all else, and by their very nature Bluetooth iems have to make compromises in sound quality due to limitations of Bluetooth audio transmission, as well as the need to house DACs and amps in tiny wearable headsets. In fact, of all the Bluetooth iems that I've tried, the only three that I find really enjoyable to listen to are the Samsung Galaxy Buds Pro, the Apple AirPods Pro, and the Sony 1000XM4. So bear that in mind as we take a look at the Edifier Neobuds S, which are the new top-of-the-range Bluetooth iems from Edifier. Edifier, of course, are a well-established Chinese audio brand who make an enormous range of Bluetooth iems, covering the whole price range. At £179 currently on Amazon UK, the Neobuds S are top of the line. And at that price, remember, they're playing with the big boys. So have they got what it takes to compete with those heavyweights? In a word, no. There you go, you didn't expect a verdict so early on in the video, did you? But keep watching to find out why. Spoiler alert, it's going to get a little bit ugly. First off, I must give props to Edifier, who contacted me to ask me to review the Neobuds S and sent out a review sample. I did warn them that I really didn't like the sound of their very similar predecessors, the Neobuds Pro. I reviewed those last year and wasn't a big fan of the V-shaped metallic sounding artificial sound which they produced. Undeterred, Edifier still wanted me to try these. I do think that companies who engage with reviewers, even after less than stellar reviews, should be commended. As ever, the usual disclaimers with my reviews apply, so although Edifier provided the review sample, they didn't pay me to make the review and they haven't seen the contents of the video before you. So I really wanted to like these, but sadly after using these extensively for the past week, my feelings towards them are anything but warm and fuzzy. So on first inspection, these look very similar to last year's Neobuds Pro, even down to the shape of the earbuds and the case, along with the lush packaging and the range of accessories provided. You do get a whole selection of 7 different sizes of reasonable quality silicone ear tips. Now I have asymmetric ear canals, so it was really nice to be able to have a slightly larger tip in the left ear than on the right. The slight difference here is that the ear tips on the S don't protrude too deeply into your ear canals, which also means that they fit less securely and they tend to wriggle their way out when you're walking around. I certainly can't wear them for anything strenuous such as running. The big change though is that the Neobuds S are now certified with Qualcomm's new Snapdragon sound standard. This is a newer Bluetooth codec technology which supposedly allows higher bitrate audio transmission over aptX adaptive to give near CD quality sound as long as you have a high quality lossless stream. Sounds good, right? Well, the problem is that there are very few smartphones that support the Snapdragon sound standard. According to Qualcomm's official website, it currently seems to be a feature almost exclusively available on recent Xiaomi and Motorola handsets. And it goes without saying that iPhones, any Apple devices, only support AAC. Now my Pixel 4a 5G seem to offer some form of aptX HD, and Edifier confirmed when I emailed them that the LDAC codec, which was used on the Neobuds Pro, the predecessor, is not available on the Neobuds S. It's vital that you do download the Edifier Connect app, which works on both iOS and Android, which is great. Now this allows you to fiddle with all the settings of the Neobuds S, including sound profiles and tap controls, but be warned that it's not a good app. In fact, I'd say it's pretty terrible in terms of the amount of bloat that there is. So on the main screen of the app, only one of the tabs along the bottom actually relates to the Neobuds S. The rest of it is pretty much a shop front for Edifier's other products, which I find utterly intolerable. Okay, so on to the sound quality then, and I tested the Neobuds S with both my iPhone over AAC and my Pixel 4a 5G with lossless offline FLAC files, as well as streaming via Tidal and Spotify. In short, I'm afraid the sound from the Neobuds S is not good, because the two pillars of sound quality, namely a decent, well-tuned frequency response, and precise technicalities are both really poor in my opinion. So in terms of tuning, this is a so-called consumer-friendly V-shaped curve with oodles of bass, mainly mid-bass, which is really sluggish and bloated and overall just plain bad. There's no nuance, texture or speed to the bass, which makes Aura, my go-to bass test track from Bicep's first album, sound really murky. There is plenty of bass weight and thump and even some sub-bass rumble, but quantity over quality is what's on offer here. At the other end of the scale, the bass uplift is countered by a horribly bloated upper mid-range and really splashy, sibilant lower treble. This demonstrates all the worst aspects of upper mid-range shoutiness, as well as having higher treble peaks which give a nasty hard edge to cymbals and hi-hats. It's a really sharp sound which cuts through the muddy bass, which I guess it has to. But here's a public health warning for you. Do not, whatever you do, listen to Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon on these iems, as Claire Torry's passionate wailing on The Great Gig in Sky might well make your ears bleed over the Neobuds S. It really is unpleasant. So between the two-pronged attack of heavyweight bass thump and piercing upper mids is sandwiched the rest of the rather anemic mid-range. And remember, that's where most of the music actually takes place. So male vocals and lower register instruments are really lost in the mix and there's very little resolution or clarity. Now I went into the sound settings and found that I was on dynamic mode, which is definitely the worst mode here. I switched it to classical, which tones the V down a bit, makes it a bit more shallow, and things did improve a little, although it was still pretty nasty. There's also a mode which gives you a rudimentary 4-band parametric EQ to mess around with, which I did, obviously, but it didn't really improve things as I couldn't find a sound profile I was happy with. It's just too complex and too much faff, and no one's going to mess with that on these Neobuds S. I think the fact of the matter is even parametric EQ can't redeem the sound of these things. But hey, the tuning is only part of the problem. The main issue for me is the terrible metallic timbre that this particular driver array seems to have. So remember, we've got a nulls balanced armature coupled with a 10mm dynamic driver. So anything, even acoustic instruments, has this horrible metallic glare to it. Think about all those prejudices you might have had about digital music production. Well, that's what these sound like. It almost sounds as if you're listening to a really badly compressed MP3 stream. There's absolutely no articulation between the various elements of the mix, making a track like Daft Punk's Motherboard sound really poorly produced, which of course it isn't. It's one of the best recordings of modern times. Imaging? Don't be silly. Soundstage? Non-existent. It all sounds really closed in. If you wonder what audio enthusiasts and reviewers talk about when they say some airy-fairy rubbish like, whoa, it sounds very musical, just give these a listen. It's basically the opposite of what these sound like. Can it get any worse? Well, yes, I'm afraid it can, but first, let's talk about something a little bit positive, and that's the noise cancelling. Now, I wore these on the noisy, super noisy actually, London Underground on the way to attending Can Jam London yesterday. And in high noise cancelling mode, because you get low noise cancelling mode as well, I was impressed by the degree of low frequency sound attenuation that you get. I don't think it's quite good as the Sony XM4s and probably isn't even as good as the AirPods Pro, but it's okay and it's serviceable, and it certainly means that you don't have to crank up the music even louder, which is just as well because it'll feel like shoving a knife through your eardrum. However, the ambient mode, you know, the mode that lets you hear what's going on around you, is absolutely awful. If you turn it on in a quiet room, you get a sound like running water coming across quite loudly with no music playing. And then when someone does say something or something kicks off around you, you get this horrible robotic mechanical impression of sound. Now this must be how robots hear, and it isn't pleasant. Also, whilst in noise cancelling mode, the right earbud in my test sample randomly emitted some horrible loud screeching high frequency noises which actually hurt my ear. And I hate when this happens. And it means that I don't trust these buds, and consequently I won't be wearing them again. I'm sorry, Edifier. Look, there's more. I could talk about the horrible tap controls, I could talk about voice calls, which really aren't too bad actually, and all that stuff. Battery life, it's not great, but I'm not going to, because in all honesty, I find the Neobuds S to be a really poor pair of Bluetooth IEMs at a ridiculous price. £179. Remember, the Neobuds Pro, the predecessor, which is basically the same stuff but with LDAC, cost £100. It's just staggering that these are so expensive and so bad for the price. Remember, for just £20 more, you can get a pair of industry-redefining 7Hz timeless IEMs. Heck, you could even pick up a FIO BTR5 Bluetooth dongle and a pair of Moondrop Arias for less. And that combo will sound so much better than this monstrosity. But if you really, really want a set of Bluetooth IEMs, just get the AirPods Pro if you're an Apple person, or a set of the Sonys or the Samsung Galaxy Buds Pro if Android is your poison. They will sound infinitely better and probably won't fry your eardrums in the process. So thanks Edifier for sending them, but I'm really sorry I cannot in any way recommend them, and in fact I might even have to give them my first ever audio fixation avoid. I haven't got a special sticker for that, but yeah, you get the point. Anyway, I've got another Edifier product to look at the moment, and I think that's going to be rather better actually, so it's not all bad news for Edifier. So anyway, let me know what you think, and yeah, don't buy these. Take care, guys.